Our buddy Rob Smith is in the house now. He is the author of a new book, Always a Soldier, which you should check out on Amazon if you have not already. He's a contributor to The First, and you can follow him at Rob Smith online. Mr. Rob, good to have you.
Always good to be here, Buck. Thank you so much.
So let's jump into this, shall we? BLM is a movement that's been around for a few years. We've been talking today on the show extensively about what's going on in Chicago, Portland, Seattle, violence on the streets, and here in New York City, crime is rising. And I've been saying, what exactly has BLM accomplished up to this point? And I would say all the things you could point to really would be negative. What is the movement? I mean, and therefore not really accomplishments, right? But what is the movement as it stands today? What has BLM become, Rob?
Well, I think that you have to understand that Black Lives Matter, BLM at this point, is a corporation. It's a business. This is an organization, right? So this is something that has generated untold amounts of money. It's almost like this grift where they got, I think Bank of America gave them $1 billion. They're getting hundreds of millions of dollars from all of these corporations because they have managed to kind of define and brand Blackness, right? So what it is accomplishing is basically a whole lot of chaos on the streets. They're definitely accomplishing getting a lot of angry potential Democratic voters riled up. And it is accomplished making their founders and the vast majority of the infrastructure of people that are fundraising for them very, 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 very wealthy. Now, what they've accomplished for the average Black American on the street, I have no clue. Where I'm at right now in Florida, we have protesters and they come out every single night, are not entirely sure what they're protesting for or about. They're very angry. They're very sad and a little emotionally disturbed. And I have to tell you, so one of the protesters came into the neighborhood that I was in. They were a big group, and they were very confrontational with people, Black, white, Latino, whatever, that were just enjoying their evening. And they were so controversial and so confrontational and so sort of emotional about it. I saw this young Black girl just screaming and crying. And on one hand, I have a lot of empathy for that. But on the other hand, I have a lot of anger because it's so cynical among the puppet masters of the left. And this is what they do. They exploit Black pain, suffering, feelings of hopelessness for votes. It's actually very despicable, Buck. And I don't think that it's a bad thing to really speak out against that. And they're certainly not helping the Black family because when you go on the Black Lives Matter website, one of their major goals is to dismantle the structure of the nuclear family. And we all know that African Americans, like all Americans, are vastly more likely to become wealthy, successful winners in life when they come from a two-parent household. So what dismantling the two-parent family structure is doing for Black Americans, I have no idea. But like I said, it's getting a lot of people wealthy. It's making a lot of people rich. And as always, when it comes to how the left uses African Americans, it's the ones on the street that are suffering. And by the way, BLM is not doing anything about violence in Chicago. They're certainly not doing anything about that. They're certainly not doing anything about violence in the communities that are plagued by this stuff as they seek to defund the police. So look, as it stands right now, as a movement, organization, corporation, whatever you want to call it, I think it's something that is destructive. And I don't allow them to define my Blackness, so I'm not going to be afraid to say that.
We're speaking to Rob Smith, author and veteran, author of Always a Soldier and contributor to The First. So, Rob, as a member of the Black community, you, I'm going to assume, have conversations with other people in this country who are Black, and there's probably a willingness or an exchange of ideas that you can engage in where, because you can speak from that perspective, whereas I can't. And I just wonder, do you really, when you're speaking to individuals who are Black and who do believe in this movement or who do think that this is all for the good, do they believe things like when LeBron James tweeted out that Black people are literally being hunted every time they leave their homes? do they believe that, or do they understand these things, the movement slogans, as exaggerations meant to get people mobilized, but they don't really take it literally? I mean, when you're talking about a young black woman crying, for example, while confronting people and screaming about BLM stuff, it makes me wonder what do members of the black community that adhere to this movement's ideology, what do they really believe?
So I was having a conversation.
How much of this do they believe?
So I was having a conversation. I was in Minneapolis about a month ago for a GoFundMe. We raised so much money to help rebuild Minneapolis, and I'll be going there next month to deliver those checks to those small business owners. But I was at the George Floyd Memorial, and I spoke with a young black man just off the cuff. He didn't know who I was, didn't know I was conservative, didn't really care. We were just talking as basically two men. And what struck me was when we started talking about that stuff, and I don't get very confrontational in these conversations. It's to me, it's more of an exchange of ideas, right? So he really believed this stuff. And he really believed that as a black man, you know, the police are out to get me. And not only that, but this stuff starts affecting how people see the world in general, right? Because we moved from the BLM stuff and we just started talking about entrepreneurship, because I believe in Buck, you and I have had these conversations, and I thank you for leading me in the right direction in some of these conversations. But entrepreneurship is the way for all of us, black, white, Latino, it doesn't matter. I think to build wealth and become successful. And when I tried to talk to this young black man about this, it's like every single thing that I said, when I said you can, he would tell me why he couldn't, right? And so it was just this back and forth and back and forth. And by the end of, I think it was a 40-minute conversation at the George Floyd Memorial, it was hot out there that day. I think that we were both exhausted, and it took that long just to break down these mental barriers up here that told him that no matter what he does, because he's black in America, he's going to be a perpetual victim. He's going to be hunted. He'll never be successful. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it is not harder for some people than others, because that's not true. I haven't had the easiest road myself, but I think it's a mentality mindset. And one of the most destructive things about BLM and a lot of different movements like that is that they seek to encourage a mindset of hopelessness in people. And the only sort of way out of that hopelessness is to keep us in power. We will take care of you. We will take all of this on for you, but just march with our slogan, just donate to our causes. That's a destructive thing, because you're taking away agency from people.
Rob, is there, from a political strategy point of view, let's look at it that way. Do you think that there's a way that President Trump, people forget that over 1 million black Americans voted for Donald Trump in the last election, right? And I think that comes up again when you see Jamil Hill say in a tweet, a well-known ESPN and now I guess political commentator, sports commentator, now political, that if you vote for Trump, you're racist. There's no wiggle room, right? I think that was the tweet. We've heard this before from other people, but it's coming back again. So it's not, I disagree on policy. It's if you vote for Trump, you're racist. That's what's being said. Now, that would be news to the 1 million plus black Americans who voted for him, as well as the percentage of the Latino population that voted for Donald Trump, and so on and so forth. Is there, we've always had as conservatives this idea that if only the messaging could get directly to the black community about how all Americans want to see as much success, as much personal agency, autonomy, and prosperity and happiness, quite honestly, as possible within the black community, that there would be ways that Trump and conservatives, Trump now and conservatives, could gain more support politically within the black community. Is that worth the president doing right now, or is it honestly just a usage of political resources that's not going to change anything? You know, the members of the black community who like Trump will continue to, but it's very hard to make gains beyond that.
I think it's that hard to make gains. And I think that it's obviously always worth having the conversation when it comes to engaging black voters. But at a certain point, you have to realize, and this is kind of why so many black people are kind of like lost in this leftism and all of this stuff, is that it becomes a family structure issue. So if you're growing up in a broken home, if both of your parents are not there, if you don't have these strong family structures, look, we don't get we get our rights and privileges from the Constitution and from God, but this messaging of self-reliance and all that stuff, that has to come from within the home. And the evil geniuses on the left, they know that. And they deeply realize that, which is why the most popular political figures on the left generally come from two-parent households where they've gotten all this stuff. But the idea is that they get political power by lying to Black people, basically, and by telling them that these things are not important. So fundamentally, I don't think it's ever a waste of time politically to engage different audiences. I think that Trump has done it pretty beautifully when it comes from a pure policy point of view. And I think that is why a lot of people on the left are absolutely terrified about their prospects among Black voters this election, which is why we have all the BLM stuff and the race riots and all of that stuff that we're going through right now. But I think that ultimately the messaging that people get, it has to come from within the home. It has to come from within their own communities. And I think that the most powerful thing about this new, crop of Black influencers that we have all across the internet is that people are going to be able to get that stuff from their homes, but they're also going to be able to see a different perspective. One of the most omnipresent criticisms of me is that people think that I'm somehow some trust fund kid, that I came from a wealthy family, that none of those things are true. I'm from Akron, Ohio. I talk about this in the book. I'm from Akron, Ohio. I'm from a single parent household. I went to a high school in Akron, Ohio that was rated F, by the Ohio public school systems. So I had to get the messages of self-discipline, determinism, determination, self-reliance, all that stuff. I got that from the military. It didn't come from my family. So the thing is that you have to get these messages from people in the home. They're not necessarily going to come from politicians. And to tell you the truth, they're more likely to come from people like you and I than the president of the United States.
Rob Smith, everybody. The book is Always a Soldier, which you should check out on Amazon if you have not already. Go get a copy today. Download it to your Kindle. Also, Rob Smith online on Twitter, and he's a contributor to The First. Rob, always a pleasure, my friend. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Buck.
Team, whenever possible, I like to bring you some good news. And the good news that I bring you today, I don't know, it's like I'm speaking in circles here. There is good news for me to bring, and the bringing of the good news that I have for you is, all of a sudden, I am French, Buck. I am very happy for all of you. No, it's has to do with the vaccine. Trump has been saying that we got Operation Warp Speed, which whenever I hear this, I always think of that scene in Spaceballs where they go from warp speed to, I think it's ludicrous speed. Producer Mark probably hasn't even seen Spaceballs, have you?
I've heard of it. I've seen Space Jam.
Spaceballs is better. Among Rick Moranis' finest appearances on film. Not as good as Ghostbusters, but still pretty good. But, they are at Operation Warp Speed. They talk about this. And then you also you have some of the more recent news stories about the breakthroughs or at least the effective early stages of the treatment. Here's the president on the vaccine, 17.
Ultimately, our goal is not merely to manage the pandemic, but to end it. We want to get rid of it as soon as we can. That is why getting a vaccine remains a top priority. 2 vaccine candidates are entering the final stage of clinical trials this month. This was achieved in record time. It used to be years before you were in a position like we are right now. 4 other vaccines will enter final trials in the following weeks, and we're mass producing all of the top candidates so that the first approved vaccine will be available immediately. And logistically, we have the military ready to go. We have great people, logistic military people, a wonderful general who's waiting for the vaccine so they can distribute it in record time. That's what's going to happen. So our military is all set to go. We will deliver a vaccine, therapeutics, whatever it is necessary, and defeat the virus once and for all.
I think it's important to hear this. We will return to normal. This has been dragged out longer than I think almost anybody anticipated in the early days. We will return to normal. It's going to happen. I can't tell you when. It might, in my mind, I'm ready for things not to really feel normal until next summer. That's just my gut feeling. And that doesn't mean that things aren't getting better, but I think by next summer people are going to be flying on planes and not really worry. It's just going to be, maybe some people there'll be some voluntary mask wearing will still be a part of the culture, but there's going to be a return to normalcy. That's what I see. I could be wrong. But I'm very happy when I hear about the movement on these vaccines. Here's HHS Secretary Azar talking about they've just signed a big contract to get you a whole bunch of doses by the end of the year. Play 15.
Under the president's leadership, we just signed a contract with global pharmaceutical leader Pfizer to produce 100 million doses of vaccine starting in December of this year, with an option to buy another 500 million doses. Now, those would, of course, have to be safe and effective according to the FDA's gold standard. But this now adds to what President Trump has delivered, which is 4 other vaccine candidates. We now have 5 vaccine candidates that prioritize the U.S. people, where we're going to manufacture vaccine and work to secure FDA approval of them all at the same time.
I got to tell you, I'm really going to enjoy shaking hands. I was never that big into shaking hands before. I mean, I would shake hands, but I wasn't. I kind of miss it. I miss our old life, America. I do. I miss it a lot. I miss the sense that we all have that we can be around people. And I go through phases. I'm not somebody who's particularly into being in big crowds, but man, the things that I want to get back to are crowded live music shows, and I will not complain about being elbow to elbow with people in a stacked New York bar that is probably a violation of the fire code because so many people in it. I won't complain about that for a long time, I can assure you. And how long I have to wait for a drink and all the rest of it, I'm not going to bring any of that up. So I'm continuing and hoping to follow. I'm following this, continue following this, and hoping that we're going to get to a place where we have that vaccine real soon. Producer Mark, when things are totally normal, what's top of the list for you, buddy? Sports game?
Not even a sports game, because I can watch those on TV. I would say a concert.
Concert.
You can't recreate a concert at home.
Yeah, you can't. You cannot do that.
Well, you can, but really poorly.
Well, yeah. Producer Mark hears me sing sometimes before I come on air. We don't have to worry about that. Maybe one day we'll give you a taste of that. But I like to get him fired up by singing, call it like a fight song of sorts for Producer Mark before the show. So, and Producer Nick sometimes too. We get them in the mix. Anyway, a vaccine is coming. I don't know when. I don't know how good it's going to be, but it's coming. And hope is a good thing. If you've perhaps the best of things, isn't that what he says during Shawshank? I think, yeah. A quick pickup here. I mentioned this at the very top of the show. Rutgers, which is the State University of New Jersey. Producer Mark, how far are you from Rutgers?
Not very, maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah,
half hour.
okay. So, Rutgers, if you're an NJ, everybody knows Rutgers really well. I just thought this was interesting, and hat tip to collegefix.com for this. Rutgers English department to de-emphasize traditional grammar in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. Here's the piece. The English department at Rutgers University recently announced a list of anti-racist directives and initiatives for the upcoming fall and spring semesters, including an effort to de-emphasize traditional grammar rules. The initiatives were spelled out by Rebecca Walkowitz, the English department chair. Walkowitz sent out the email on Juneteenth. One of the initiatives is described as, quote, incorporating critical grammar into our pedagogy. It is listed as one of the efforts for Rutgers graduate writing program, which serves graduate students across the Rutgers community. Under so-called critical grammar, the approach challenges familiar dogma that writing instruction should limit emphasis on grammar and sentence-level issues so as not to put students from non-standard English backgrounds at a disadvantage. Don't expect proper grammar, according to the Rutgers English department And this is part of their solidarity, they say, with the BLM movement. Look, this just strikes me as kind of offensive. I don't know what else to say. And I'm not somebody who runs around calling things offensive. But solidarity with the BLM movement, according to Rutgers, is not expecting proper English to be used in the English literature department? Okay. Just going to say, these colleges keep getting crazier with this stuff. So there you have it, folks. Not quite as bad as the Smithsonian poster that said, characteristics of whiteness and had things like objective reasoning. The Smithsonian took that down. That was super offensive. Put up there by a white diversity consultant, by the way. That was the person who was behind that. Diversity consultants shaking us all down for all this cash. All right. I covered that story. Let's do roll call.
Hey, Team Buck, it's time for roll call.
I feel like dubstep didn't really get the full, I don't know. Dubstep never really got as much love as it deserved. I feel like this audience is very split over dubstep. Producer Mark, do you ever listen?
I mean, not really. I'll listen to techno remixes of songs, but not dubstep.
Yeah.
I know there's a difference.
I guess so. All right. Well, that was our dubstep intro. Let's get to the inbox. Oh, remember, please go to bucksexton.com. Check in on our site. We got stories posted throughout the day. And Producer Mark, we did have a conversation with our digital team. They would like us to start selling some T-shirts. So I think, yeah, I think we're going to make that happen.
On the air.
Yeah. There you go.
Are we going to get one with my face on it?
If you want, man, we could have the penalty box Producer Mark T-shirt. We could sell that. Something, come up with some kind of like a grumpy mascot. You know what I mean? We could do it.
Well, the grumpy cat.
Ooh, grumpy cat, but
In
a Producer Mark. But I bet the grumpy cat is trademarked.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah, I think they made $100 million off the whole grumpy cat franchise.
Just for having a cat.
You know that cat has a form of dwarfism, and that's why it looks like that.
Oh, you know that cat died, right?
I did not know that. Now I'm
yes,
sad.
Recently.
Oh, that's a shame. Okay. Well, anyway.
I got a lot of texts that day saying R.I.P. Like to me, they thought I was dead.
Oh, yeah, no, I got it. I get what you're putting down. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton or Team Buck at iHeartMedia, our employer, .com. So please send in the emails there if you want emails. Facebook. Oh, and Instagram. If you are listening to this show and you have an Instagram account and you are not following Buck Sexton on Instagram, you are missing out and you're making me sad. I want Instagram action. So Buck Sexton on Instagram. I'm going to be communicating a lot more, doing Instagram lives. It's happening. If you're following me, you see we're doing a lot more stuff on Instagram these days. So please do follow me there as well. All right. I think I covered all the plugs. And pass the buck. Tell people about this podcast, darn it. Look, there's a lot of podcasts that I'm seeing ahead of us in the Apple Store that I'm like, I know that person. Their show stinks. So I'm just going to say it. They're not good at this. So they figured out a way to leverage social media and the search algorithms on these different podcast platforms to get people downloading their show. Look, there's some of the shows are great. Of course, there's some fantastic talents on the right who have really big podcasts. But there are some people I'm like, well, that show is garbage. So let's at least beat all the garbage shows, shall we? That would be nice. All right, that means pass the buck. Tell them about and look, Spotify is so easy. And Producer Mark yells at me because we don't work for Spotify, but our podcast is on it, and you are allowed to listen to it there. And it's so straightforward, and you can listen anytime you want every day. So with that, I appreciate, Mark, you trying to keep us having jobs, though. That is nice of you.
Yes, I'm the one who loves the iHeart app.
Yeah, iHeart
because
Media.
I like my job.
Producer Mark appreciates paychecks and health care. And so, yes, we need to always be mindful of the fact that the greatest app for listening to the show is, in fact, the iHeart Radio app. Yes. All right. Taylor, Buck, yes, finally. Good to hear you on 105.9 KNRS out here in Utah. Utah is ripe for the Freedom Hut. That deserves a proper celebration. Bring out the guns, cannon, smoke, barbecue, and some stuff to blow up. You are the man. P.S. Go away, Mitt Romney. Taylor, I'm so glad you got to hear me out on KNRS in Utah and Salt Lake City, and I think you'll be hearing more of the Freedom Hut out there. I got a feeling. So please keep listening, and if you don't, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, but you will be hearing more from that. It's a great heritage radio station out in Salt Lake City, KNRS, and anytime we're on there, we're very, very pleased. Matthew, hey, Buck, have you heard about the upcoming series on Showtime based on James Comey's book, A Higher Loyalty? It's about, yep, you guessed it, Russia. No doubt it'll be presented from a far-left perspective. What I thought you'd find interesting is that Donald Trump will be in it, played by Brendan Gleeson. That's Hamish from Braveheart. Keep it up, Buck. Shields high. Is your father a ghost, or do you converse with the Almighty? Producer Mark, you've seen Braveheart, right?
Sure.
I'm actually a little sad right now. You've never seen Braveheart? I don't even know how this is possible.
I'm sure I've seen parts of it. What was it? Oh, it came out in '95.
I think.
Was 2.
Yeah. You were like a year old.
Yeah.
Can you go? I think it's on Netflix.
It's a 3-hour movie.
It's the best movie of all time.
No, absolutely not.
The best movie ever made.
I barely have an attention span to listen to you for 3 hours. I'm gonna watch a movie,
and you get paid for that. So
exactly.
That's a fair point. I had not heard. Back to Matthew here. I had not heard about this series on Showtime, but I'm sure it's going to be horrible. I mean, James Comey is not an appealing fellow in any regard, so I don't know what else to say. I mean, he's just kind of a lanky, sanctimonious weirdo. So how they're going to do it. But remember, this is very important because this is how the left gets a lot of support for themselves from people who understand they'll be taken care of. What I mean here is if you are a soldier for the left, or if you do something that makes the left apparatus happy, the Democrat Party happy, they will memorialize you, lionize you, canonize you on that issue. I think of Steve Schmidt of the Lincoln Project. It's like, I ran McCain's campaign and lost by a ton and led to 8 years of Obama and dragging the country into socialism, but Steve Schmidt had Woody Harrelson play him in the movie Game Change on HBO, right? So if you're going to be a Republican, you want to be the kind of Republican who gets a famous actor to play you in a sympathetic way in one of these movies. That's always in the back of the minds of many of these political players, many of the establishment Republicans out there. So, yeah. I'm sure the series will be horrible, and the Russia thing is ridiculous. And they're gonna make it seem like it's not ridiculous. That's the whole point. Just like the movie Recount with Kevin Spacey, another HBO movie. Oh, you're noticing a pattern. Made it seem like Bush stole the election from Gore, when the whole purpose of what they were doing was to only recount. Democrats only wanted recounts in some areas that were Democrat strongholds. No recounts in Republican stronghold areas to change the votes so that Gore could win. They were trying to steal the election. But the whole movie leads you to believe, oh, no, Republicans don't want all the votes counted. No, Democrats only wanted, and there was never a count that had, of any kind, ever done that had Al Gore ahead in Florida. Never. Didn't exist. But they kept saying, well, let's do a recount in this really blue county, but not any other counties around it. It was very transparent what they were doing. Oh, and Kevin Spacey played the political consultant whose name escapes me right now, but I wouldn't want... I'm just going to say this right now. When they make the Buck Sexton movie, I don't want Kevin Spacey playing me. I don't want Kevin Spacey playing me. Who do you want
playing you?
What?
Who do you want to play Buck Sexton?
Wow, that's a very good question. I think if we want something that's really captures my essence and is just true to life and would be a visual cue to the audience, I think we got to go with the guy who plays Thor. I think that would be good.
Really?
That guy. I don't even know his name. I want that guy to play me in the movie. A radio host who just magically has 28-inch python biceps, that guy.
You want Chris Hemsworth to play.
Yeah. You know what? I would take either of the Hemsworth brothers. Either of them. But,
that's it?
Yeah. Either one of them could play me in the movie. I would accept that, We have similar eye and hair color. So
and then you look at your physique and you're like, no. He's got to gain. You need Fat Thor.
Oh, my God. Did you just call me Fat Thor on my own radio show? Wow.
You just said that was right down the middle. Come on.
Okay, everybody. Producer Mark put one in the upper deck today. Let him. He's running the bases. Oh, man. That's
time for baseball season.
I'll take it. All right. I need to regroup here for a second. All right, and we're back. And I would just note that producer Nick says Adam Scott from Parks and Rec. Is that his? Wait, is that his? What's his? Yeah, that's his name, right? The actor's name.
I googled him. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, that guy does look like. I mean, everyone always says this, and this is the thing. But he is little. He has tiny shoulders. He's a little man. I'm not. How do you say it? Not little like him. But
I think we went over that in the last segment.
Yeah, I think I already stepped on that landmine. Okay. It's kind of French, and then my accent kind of turned Hungarian there for a second. I don't know why that happened. All right. We have more takes here from Dave. Hey, Buck, let producer Mark run with his sports takes. They're fantastic. I'm a huge sports fan. He's spot on. Take care. Okay, producer Mark, since you're feeling your oats today, what's the latest in the sports world we need to know about?
I don't think there really is the latest right now. Sports start on Thursday night. That's about it.
Well, what are they starting with?
Baseball starts. I believe it's the world champion Washington Nationals taking on the New York Yankees.
Who do you root for in that? Anything but the Yankees, right?
In that game, I mean, I hate both teams so much.
You're hoping they can both lose.
Yeah, which is not possible. Yeah, actually, a fun fact about that game, you're gonna love this. Guess who's throwing out the first pitch?
Dr. Fauci.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that. The Fauci. Indeed. Dude, they're going to make Fauci, they're going to have a whole series about him where Fauci is played by like a super handsome 40-year-old Hollywood leading man who is defeating the virus, undoing Trump's tyranny, and mysteriously knows Kung Fu for no apparent reason for the fight scenes. Like, that's what's going to happen with the Fauci. You watch.
Watch that just for the Kung Fu part. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah. Be like, hi-ya, take that with the mitigation. You know what I mean? It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Dennis, Buck, and grumpy producer Mark. Yeah, that's right. Dennis knows. Trust me, I don't watch CNN on a regular basis, but happened to be changing channels and stopped because they were discussing wearing masks. The guest was citing a study done with hamsters. Yes, those rodents that look like mice wearing masks. Seriously, a study was done with hamsters wearing masks, and those results showed that humans should wear masks. I'll continue to take your stand on masks and not listen to what the hamsters say. Love the show. Absolutely the best conservative podcast out there. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for having good taste in your conservative podcast listening. So I appreciate that. I don't even know how some of the people that are conservatives that have podcasts that do well, I don't understand how anyone could listen for more than 5 minutes, but it is what it is. Some of the others are great. There's some greats. I'm not somebody who's I'm not a hater. I love my conservative brothers and sisters who are doing a good job. But as for the mask situation and hamsters, this just reminds me. I used to think that having a hamster would be kind of fun as a pet, and then I realized that if it gets loose, it just feels like a hamster running around is now a rodent in your house. True or false, producer Mark?
Absolutely. Like, I would be petrified if my hamster got out. And I just didn't know where it was.
I was just thinking, things get too crazy at the frat. Things get too crazy at the frat party, and maybe your hamster gets out.
Imagine in the middle of the night, your hamster crawls on your face, and you didn't know where it was.
Whoa. We're kind of going in other directions here.
I was talking about an actual hamster. What? I don't even want to know where you were going. Nope.
I try to, after about a half a dozen drinks, I got to watch out. I don't want my hamster to get loose. I don't even to catch that on video. Okay.
Is that the thing on top of your head?
Exactly. No, that's more like a chinchilla, though, because of the thickness of the fur,
Sure.
People have chinchillas as pets, and from what I understand, they can be quite delightful pets.
People have some odd pets.
I've never understood snakes as pets. And whenever
I
I look,
get it.
very few pet choices I judge. I love dog people, cat people, fish, birds, a lot of things you can have. Pet goat even I'm down for. Any mammal's okay. Pet snake I don't understand, but we'll talk about that another day. That's the show. Shields high.